Yeah, that's right, Michael. I'm really glad you brought that up, if you don't mind me jumping in with this, because one of the questions that you asked before, issues you brought up before, is where do you go to find an excellent, trial attorney? And the certification process by the Supreme Court of New Jersey typically instituted to say that these people have been vetted for superior qualifications based on the number of trials, reviews from the adversaries, reviews from the judges, and then even to be able to take the test, which you have to have all this experience, and then you've got to take the examination. And the reason why, now, that does not mean that a non-certified attorney is not very, very good. They can be. I've tried cases against many non-certified attorneys, but the Supreme Court put that trial certification in place so that the consumer, the customer, the client doesn't have to go searching 100,000 lawyers. There's already a pre-approved pool by the New Jersey Supreme Court that's saying these guys are experts. So when people call me, I try to explain to them, look for that when you're looking for a criminal trial attorney, and also look at their skills as whether they were a prosecutor or not. That's something that I think is always important. And when they say they're a prosecutor, this is the key question your audience needs to ask. When you were a prosecutor, did you ever try a murder case or a rape case? And Michael, I'm going to tell you why. When I was in charge of the prosecutor's office, only the A team got into the homicide squad. Only the A team lawyers got into the sex assault squad. So you know that if a prosecutor trusted somebody to put them in those units, that they're a pretty squared away trial lawyer.
It's awesome. So you have the certification process that helps you to identify the universe of potentially great attorneys. But let me ask you this question, Bob. So you've occupied both sides of the field, right? So for the folks who are just tuning in and don't really fully appreciate this, people think like, oh, I'm going to bring you up on criminal charges. I'm going to file a criminal complaint against you. There's only one person, right, or one group of people in, let's say, New Jersey or the state of New York that have the ability to actually file a criminal complaint against someone. And that is the prosecutors, the district attorneys at the state level, right? And so when it comes to that, you've occupied the space of both prosecutor for a very large county, right, Morris County, which makes you the top law enforcement officer of that county. And now you occupy the space of an attorney who is on the other side of the field, which is defending those criminal prosecutions. Is that fair?
Yeah, that is.
So in your experience, right, from both sides of the field, what qualities, besides certification, do you think make great attorneys and people who can really shape and influence results?
Wow, that's an awesome question. I've trained so many trial lawyers, and the bottom line is it's who you are as a person that is going to make the great trial lawyer. My dad, who's 86 years old and still practicing law and still going to court, who in his day was an amazing trial lawyer, always told me as I was moving, as he was brainwashing me to be a great trial lawyer myself, he would say to me,
influencing.
Yes, influencing. Well, Michael, an interesting thing happened to me anecdotally when I was all for it. I was reading transcripts since 7. My father, the war stories, the people, the culture, the milieu. I was going to hit that ground running. I couldn't wait to get into the courtroom, and then bam, the time came when I had to try my first jury trial as an assistant prosecutor in Hudson County. That's where I started my career, very big county. And all of a sudden, this thing hit me. I started getting nervous. I started feeling uncomfortable. I started being fearful. And I was shocked. I was an EMT. I worked in the projects for years. I've been shot at. I've had all sorts of those kind of experiences. But now I'm afraid to stand up and do the thing that I wanted to do my entire life. So the day before my opening statement, I went to my father and I said to him, Dad, what makes a great trial lawyer? And he said, kid, let me tell you something. You were a great trial lawyer since you were 5 years old. It's all who you are. It's all about your heart. It's all about your passion, your dedication. They don't teach you that in law school. And I used to try to tell my assistant prosecutors that you could be a soft-spoken person. You can be a person like me that's a little louder and a little more passionate in the way I go about things. And each personality can be as effective in presenting a case. So I think it has a lot to do with that. Michael, if there were one thing that bothered me as the prosecutor, and if you were this way, you did not have a job, is not caring.
Yes.
If you care, And you felt, I had a homicide case that was one, when I came into Morris County, it was one of the most horrific, and I did homicides for years as an assistant prosecutor, that this member, I don't want to get graphic, but a brutal killing of a young girl. And when I was asking, she was 14, and when I was asking the assistant prosecutor when I went in there why this case was 5 years old, I got this kind of response, body language and all. This is Morris County. We really don't try a lot of cases here. I said, well, I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to give you a break this one time, but if I ever hear or see that sentiment again, then you can go work in another area of the law. If you can't get impassioned and fight for your victim who was brutalized in this manner, you have no business being in the homicide squad for sure, and probably no business being in the prosecutor's office.
Beautiful. Yeah.
That person left. Passion.
Yeah. And I will say this, Bob. First of all, I have chills, right? Every time I speak with you, I literally get chills because it is a person who has obviously mastery over all influence techniques and things of that nature, unconsciously, right? You're not doing it on purpose. It is who you are, right? And influence is a skill. So not only that, but you have wonderful, wonderful capabilities in terms of your communication, wonderful influencing skills, but philosophically, right? Ideologically, I see a mirror in you, because I agree with that completely. You know, being aggressive or having the ability to strategically access aggression makes you an effective advocate, right? But there has to be a fuel for the fire. And so your nervousness and that connection, right? Like our words in Caligari law are caring, urgent, and aggressive for exactly that reason, in that order, because without caring, without connection to the cause and making it your purpose, right? You don't have the fuel for that fire, and then everything is meaningless. Nothing actually has purpose. And so I'm so glad to hear you say that. And that's not just me blowing smoke, because I couldn't agree more that is what differentiates good attorneys from world-class attorneys, the ability to connect and have that level of caring. So, you know, I just wanted to say thank you, right? Because I couldn't agree more with that sentiment.
Well, I think I'm willing to take it a step further and say that's what differentiates good and great in everything.
Yeah.
I was speaking to a friend of mine, big guy in Silicon Valley, and he was getting, this is before all this, he was getting like an outhouse built next to his pool. And the guy that was doing the wiring was 3 times more expensive than the next guy along. I'm like, why did you spend 3 times the wiring? It's just wire. It's just wire. Why do you spend 3 times? They're all certified. And he went, look at this. And he took off one of the panels and he showed me the wires behind the panels, totally invisible to everyone. And they're all at right angles and they're all threaded in properly. And he went, everyone else just puts it there and just lets it fall down. He went, an artisan cares about their craft, and they bring, and the benefits to that, you might not see it on day 1 or day 2 or day 5 or day 10, but that level of passion and care, you can see that in plumbers, dentists, attorneys, and they're the people that everybody, I think, instinctively goes, I want to work with them. I want to be around them, because whether it's obviously in the trial law, it's far more important than my plumbing, right, or my electrics, but it's the same concept. So I think it's not just great attorneys. I think it's great full stop. I think you get rid of the word attorneys. The difference between good and great are people that go, I care about this. Whether it's relevant or irrelevant to you, I care about this. This is my identity. I care about this.
Yeah. And so, yeah, beautifully said, Peter, and I couldn't agree more on that, because you're right. Caring, right, at the highest levels is what differentiates good human beings from world-class human beings. So I agree with that. But
Michael, can I interrupt that for a second?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, you know, I'm so influenced by my own dad. One of the great things about being a lawyer, and I thought you were going to ask me, you may be asking me this later, so maybe I'm jumping ahead, is his sentiment that every single day, now anybody can do this, but a lawyer could do it in a special way. Every single day we can touch somebody's life and make it better, make them breathe easier. And so a lot of people have said to me, well, how could you be a prosecutor and then be a defense attorney? That seems to be an incongruity in people's minds. And I used to laugh when I was a young assistant prosecutor, because I used to have a friend that said, all you assistant prosecutors, all you want to do is put people in jail that are innocent. Then I became a defense attorney, and that very same person said, all you want to do is get guilty people off. So, there's this kind of thing that goes on. But you know what? In the essence of the difference with each one is, yeah, each one has a different role. But when you're a prosecutor and you have far more control, I used to say to my staff, 10% of the people need to be put away for as long as humanly possible because they represent a continuing danger to the community. I'm using that number as just a statistic, a made up thing. But 90% of the people that are coming across your desk as a prosecutor are broken. They're mentally ill, they're addicted, or a combination of those things. So how about we turn the dial just a little bit from, instead of hitting a fly with a sledgehammer and looking at your stats as how many years you put people in jail, to rather those 90% of the people using the criminal justice process as an opportunity to make them change for the better. And I would always talk to my staff philosophically like this, just like I'm talking to you right now. I said, at the end of the day, when you're on your deathbed, if you have an opportunity to reflect, you will not be thinking about how many years you put people in jail, but you will remember how many lives you touched and the rippling effects that had. And that will be your mark in life that will last far after you're gone. As a defense lawyer, you have that opportunity with the people that are broken, mentally ill, they're addicted, they're scared, they're frightened. It's a much more intimate representation there. There, I love it because I get an opportunity not just to try to get an excellent legal result, but I get a chance to be able to do stuff for them personally, where hopefully they walk away and say, what I cared most about what Bianchi did was how he cared for me as a person. And oh yeah, he also got that excellent legal result.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. So we now have one trait down, right, that makes good between good and world class. So now you have a person who's caring, right? You have them sitting in front of you. What do you do, right? Whether it's you, whether it's someone you're working with, training, whatever it is, how do you begin to mold that person once they've demonstrated that aptitude? What are you looking for in the person in front of you, the person within you, to help shape and influence results?
In terms of like a staff or a lawyer, another attorney?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
So, to me, when I was interviewing many people as prosecutor, and it's no different than how I interview now as a defense lawyer or for my consulting group, what I look for is who they are as a person. And my interviews aren't really technical oriented. Look, your resume came in, you graduated law school, you got all these things. I get it. You're technically capable of doing the job, but I want to know who you are as a person, because here's the thing, and I used to say it all the time as prosecutor, I don't want to buy into a bad attitude. I don't buy into another, toxic personality. I don't want to buy into, I had some very, very skilled people that could not understand why they weren't advancing through multiple administrations. And I would sit and talk with them and I'd say, well, is it a Bob Bianchi issue? Or is it a Mike Rubio as a former prosecutor, or the prosecutor before that? Or could it be that sometimes we look into the mirror, and I had a mirror kind of just on the side of my desk. I get up and I look in it and I'd say, I don't know, am I the guy that looks in the mirror and sees a paunchy, balding, middle-aged guy and not Brad Pitt? I mean, are you seeing that perhaps when you go to scenes, crime scenes, and everybody gets blown up because of the manner in which you're speaking to them, or you go to a meeting and everybody feels insulted, or they feel that you've said something negative? Leadership is about empowering people. And probably the best leader I've ever seen was my tactical operations captain. When he would bring to me a job, a unit, a thing we were doing, a wiretap investigation, so on and so forth, I used to love this about him. He didn't sit at the main table. He had the secretaries there. He had the paralegals there. He had the detectives there. And in law enforcement, it's very chain of commandy. It's very, very serious chain of command issues. And he would start with the clerical staff and say, hey, Mary Ann, tell us what it was that you did when you were preparing the wiretap. And I would get the briefing through all of his people. He never gave the whole package like many of them did. That, when I would look at that, I'd say, that guy is a leader.
Beautiful, beautiful. Caring, leadership, a leadership technology. I guess, have you ever broken down leadership and the various forms of technology? Because I have, and I agree with you, right? Leadership is absolutely critical. I've broken it down into component parts. What do you think is the mark, right? Besides empowerment, right? And the capability to empower and hold people accountable, what do you think is the mark of a great leader?
You're going to start bringing me into some sidebar thing. Love. It's as simple as that. It's the willing the good of the other person, even when they are toxic, even when they are difficult. It's love drives, in my opinion, and I don't mean romantic love. I mean
No, no,
that
no. I get it.
the good of the other person calms you down, brings you to a space. I always use the stop, look, and go approach. If I am somebody's agitated or getting me upset or does something that is offensive or disloyal to me, I stop first before I act. I look and say, what is this that's triggering in me, my blocking of love for this person? And then I go, and I go in a much more deliberate fashion. I'm not saying that I don't address it. That love does not mean that you are not confrontational. Love does not mean, in fact, quite the opposite. Love means that you have something to say to a person, that you have the courage and the care for that other person to say it in a civil way in order to try to accomplish resolution. So to me, that is the most important characteristic next to inspiration. I think it all kind of melds into one as far as me as to what a leader is. My job was to be a cheerleader. My job was to empower. My job was to put people in the right places. My job was also to take people out of places that they were not suited for. I just had a conversation with my consulting group side where somebody asked me, well, this person's a problem and I'm having a problem. I'm like, look, sometimes you need to separate for both you and them. And you know, everybody takes a deep breath. It's hard to do, but to me, Michael, and inspiration are the most important things for a leader. And lastly, I had Teddy Roosevelt's quote, "Man in the arena." I'm not sure if you're familiar with that quote. It's really unfortunate that oh my gosh, you got to read it. It's really gender oriented, but it talks about the man in the arena who is beaten up and sweat and blood all over him. Where Brene Brown, Dr. Brene Brown, who I trained with, who's a famed psychologist, talks about the people in the cheap seats that watch the battle going on in the arena. They have a lot to say about what goes on in that battle. They have a lot of commentary about that battle, but they themselves would never go into that arena themselves.
Yep.
So I had that man in the arena quote blown up and placed in multiple places in my office when I was a prosecutor. It's in my office now as a defense lawyer. And my message to them was, if you go into that arena, you have fear, address that fear, go in, fight the fair fight, the ethical fight, the right fight. And if you lose, I don't care. Took enough courage to get in that arena. Just some thoughts.
Yeah, and you want to know something? It's the person. There's so much that you said that I want to make, I want to address, and I want to make distinctions on. But I'm gonna go backwards from what you just shared. With regard to that, it's funny because it is possible to make no mistakes and still fail, right? It is possible to make no mistakes and still fail. And so there's something so brave and so beautiful about a person who's willing to take that risk, step into the arena, challenge themselves, right? Whether it's a actual arena, meaning like the courtroom, or even an internal battle, right? The paradoxical war in a courtroom, which is, it's not you versus your adversary, it's you trying to influence a result that's happening. It's a paradoxical internal battle. But I couldn't agree more with that concept. And it's when you step into the arena and you challenge yourself and challenge those around you that you actually begin to grow and change so that the future of whatever you're dealing with, those challenges no longer become challenges anymore. It just becomes your new normal, your new comfort zone. And the whole inspiration love issue that you mentioned, I get it, right? And of course, it's not romantic love. It's loving human beings for what they are. And one of the beautiful things that one of my mentors, Sean Callaghy, who's part of the Unblinded movement, used to tell us is that everything that people do to, around, or that impacts you is either an act of love or a cry for help, right? It's either an act of love or a cry for help. And so a lot of times people don't know or are not that well-intended, right? Their actions are well-intended, but they're not that good at communication, and they don't even understand fully their own feelings. So someone could be terrified out of their mind, but yelling belligerently, and really just comes from a place of massive uncertainty, and they don't know how to process those feelings and emotions, and their conditioning takes them to become aggressive and angry. And so it's almost like the exact opposite. Like a person who's uncertain, you expect them to be hit with the fight, flight, or freeze mentality, but they're going ballistic and aggressive and everything. And it's just really because they're terrified, they're scared. And so having love for human beings and understanding that they are fallible creatures, and understanding and appreciating a cry for help when it happens is one of the most, in my opinion, yes, leadership, human being, super critical quality. Just really one second, I want to shout out, we got Adam, Robert, Gil on the line, Diana, all people who are sending love this way. We have a couple of questions pending. I'm sorry, folks, I got a little carried away. But I just want to say that there's a lot of love going on in Facebook right now. So I wanted to call all you guys out. Thank you so much for all of that. But Bob, do you mind if we transition into answering a question, and then we can go right back into it, because it's been pending for quite a while and I feel guilty. So right now we're dealing with a lot of challenges related to COVID-19, the coronavirus, whatever you want to call it. And that's creating massive uncertainty for individuals, but also for business owners. And I know that, there's a major drive of yours is helping, businesses prepare for COVID-19 preparedness, right? We'll call it preparedness. What is your understanding, and when should a business contact you or someone else who's preparing for COVID-19? What's the most optimal spot for that?
Michael, I've been saying this in the media a lot. Everybody was under the misapprehension, in my opinion, that when the government turned the spigot on, however little or much they did it, that they were going to come up with rules and guidelines to tell businesses how they should, repatriate themselves back into work in a safe and effective way. Having been the head of Homeland Security as part of my role as county prosecutor for my county, and working with state and federal officials, I learned one thing very quickly when we would speak to businesses and go to schools. Everyone is different. Each business is different. Its workflows are different. Its customer base is different. Its ability to use technology is different, and on we could go. So each business needs to be able to have a unique plan and a unique footprint with regard to how to recover from this. And Andrew Cuomo, about 2 weeks ago, basically said what I'm saying. When we open back up again, each business is going to be responsible, which is kind of unnerving to me. And this may be my law enforcement side coming out. It's because we as customers, right, we all need to take responsibility that we go to places that are operating in a safe and effective way and that we feel comfortable with, and need to turn around and walk away if it's not. And then the businesses need to do that, which is both brand protection to make sure that they're doing the right thing, but they also need to have procedures put into place given each individual environment in order to have a COVID-19 response plan, we call it. Part of that is having a COVID-19 coordinator, a person getting the policies, procedures, having a professional look at the various elements that I just spoke to you about, everything ranging from interaction with clients and customers to social distancing to disinfection. Make sure that that plan is put into place. Make sure that that coordinator is responsible for making sure the employees are healthy, temperature check possibilities, PPE, protective equipment that may be needed. And somebody has to make sure that, this is the most important thing, Michael, in my mind, that not only do you have these policies and procedures, but you are actually effectively documenting those and making sure that they're being followed. Having a procedure that's not followed is meaningless. So I hate to give a general answer, but each business is on its own as to how they're going to come up with trying to limit as much as possible the exposure here.
Yeah, I think you so beautifully butted against a concept which, whether it's COVID-19 preparedness, life preparedness, leadership preparedness, doesn't really matter. There's a very common concept that I think we've been conditioned to ignore, right? And that is, culture and society have made certain conduct impolite, right? And so people are afraid of being impolite, and it puts them at risk for a lot of different things. There was a study that I read years ago, and I don't remember what the actual statistic was, but people who were victims of sexual assault were questioned, and during their engaged in any kind of action or conduct that would have eliminated the risk of this happening to them. And I forgot the exact language. It was handled much more delicately. And I think it was like 85% or 84% of the people said yes, but and the reason that they didn't do it was that they didn't want to appear rude, right? So there's a lot of things that happen like late at night, and you're like, oh my God, you hear a person, they're walking kind of close to you, and you're like, well, I don't want to assume that they're going to do something to harm me, so I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. but every piece of your instinct is going, protect yourself, protect yourself, protect yourself. But there's overarching programming of, but it's rude, it's impolite, I don't want to offend them. And so I think that we're heading into a culture of, it is not okay for you to say that offends me if it's subjective and ridiculous. But you should also be doing things to protect yourself. Like if an employer is not doing things to ensure or limit your exposure to potential, situations where 100% of the employees come back in starting May 15th, and you're like, okay, great. What's the protocol for social distancing? Social distancing, you're going to sit right next to a person who you have no idea how, whether or not they're feeling well or not, whether or not they may have the virus or are asymptomatic, have it, and potentially infect you and your family. Like, that's completely inappropriate. And it's okay, as long as you do it respectfully, to question those kinds of things and not stay quiet just to be polite. Right. And I think that is a life lesson that a lot of people need to learn, because it also keeps them from telling the truth. Right. You hold back because you don't want to be impolite. What's your experience with that?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. It's in the crime world, this is even before COVID-19, as you said, you try to teach people how to target harden themselves. That was part of the job that we would go out into the community and do. And people would be talking about, they wouldn't use the word impolite, but rude, or, oh my God, I don't want to be obnoxious. And we're not asking them to do anything other than to tap into that instinct that you were just referring to, and that you have a responsibility to yourself and to your family to ensure feel something. If you feel something, say something. Like they say, if you see something, say something. That's what COVID-19 is going to be about. And it can be very difficult to do. And there's other issues at play there too. They're worried about their employers, and they're worried about retaliation and all sorts of things of that nature. But there's nothing more sacred than your life. So if that is an instinct you possess, which I think we all do, then being impolite in the face of this virus is a very dangerous thing.
So practical guidelines. I'm an employee. I just got the order to return to work, right? What are the types of things that you think that an employee should be asking their employer to kind of prepare their employers for frequently asked questions or concerns?
I want to look. If I was an employee, I'd want to know what our consulting group does. Did you consult anybody? Do we have a COVID-19 response plan? And if so, what is it? Is it written out? What disinfection procedures are being done? What protective equipment do we need? What social distancing? How much are we going to be able to use our at-home Zooms and technology, as opposed to being here? Are there going to be flex shifts, and so that there's staggering of employees, so that they're not all congregated at one time? Look, Michael, I mean, just before this broke, I had to go to a court jammed with about 300 people waiting to get through the door into the courtroom. I was like leaning up against the wall, like, oh my God, this is terrible. This is right in the middle of the COVID. Go to the courtroom to stand up to say, Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty. Turn around, walk through a throng of people, go back, disinfect my hands, wipe my face. Took my clothes off when I got home. And just because of that, my point would be to the court, say, for example, why do we need to continually drive to a courthouse, go through a magnetometer with the potentially infected people, walk into a courtroom potentially infected, when I could be on this Zoom right now and say the words not guilty, or write it in a letter saying not guilty?
Yeah.
So the businesses that are smart are going to use these technologies as well to hopefully limit the exposure. So there's so many things that can be done, but it depends. Are you a retail establishment? Are you a pizza parlor? Are you a corporation? Are you a law firm? Everyone's different.
Yeah, and I think you've again triggered this very interesting concept that, the practice of law is probably no different than many other industries, in that, well, this is the way we've done it for centuries, right? Of course, this is the way we're supposed to do it. And I think it was Peter himself, and Peter, I hope you're listening to this, because I've given you credit on like 17 occasions at minimum on this concept, that COVID-19 didn't create new trends. COVID-19 did not create new trends. What it did was a massive accelerant towards existing trends. You and I have had telephonic conferences with courts. right? We've had it. You and I are probably very similar. We're both trial attorneys in that we like appearing. We want to give oral argument, especially when it's something important for us, because I want people to see me. I want people to hear my voice. I want people to feel the energy coming off of me, how congruent I am, how authentic I am, how much I believe in what I'm doing. But we don't have to do that for everything. And so
Right.
there's this COVID-19 has actually caused an acceleration, right? My own partner, Sean, goes, hey, do you think we're in the office? And I go, at home, without a doubt. He goes, so why am I paying rent? Like, this is crazy. I don't want to pay rent anymore. Like, let's do this from home. This is great. But Peter was the one who originally said this. I'm sure it's, you know, he's not the only one who said it, but there's this acceleration of trends. I'm going to ask you, Bob, first, and then I want to swing it to Peter to weigh in on this. What trends do you think in the practice of law or in business, in any industry, whatever it is, do you think are probably the best trends that you really hope hang around post COVID-19, post whatever this is?
Well, I'll tell you, is where we were just, at least from a legal point of view, is the wasted appearances that you go and do de minimis minor things that don't need to be done. And I understand that the repercussion of that is going to be some people will lose jobs. You don't need all the sheriff's office. You don't need all the clerks. But I would hope the courts would, I'm not confident, Michael, you know how this goes, but I would hope that the courts would say, wow, this really saved a lot of time, was economical. People didn't have to come driving, less accidents, less, tell the judge I'm up 5 minutes late, I can't get a parking spot. All that disappears. But I agree with you when you're talking about testimonial motions or even oral arguments on motions, and definitely without any question, a jury trial, that can't be replaced through this technology. But I'm hoping that that is going to be the result of it. And as far as businesses are concerned, I think we're all learning, I agree, this is accelerating trends, and people have found, I love this about humankind. I love how resilient we are in the face of a trauma, and how we look at old ways that we can't do anymore and find new and better ways to accomplish what is now, we look back and say, passé. So I think there's all sorts of opportunities. I have a lot of friends, they're concerned, they're scared, lawyers, shutting their offices down. You email them, you get we're not open until COVID-19 is over. Yeah, businesses slow down for us too, just like I'm sure everybody else, just like restaurants. But you know what? My partner and myself, my law partner said, hey, let's hit this running. What opportunity can we find here? Even if it's doing our business plan that we can do better, or our marketing plan that we could do better, or our strategic alliances with other lawyers that we work with collaboratively. We have worked harder in this last 6 weeks. We've been exhausted, mentally exhausted, but I feel great about it. Now, look, I only try to, as best I can, presently, with as much gratitude as I can muster. And there's always something to be grateful for. I'm not worried about the future because I can't control that, but I can control what I'm doing right now, which is building a better business so that on the other end of this, hopefully that'll pay dividends. And I think everyone in their own way can do these things.
Yeah, and Peter, just give me 1 second. I just want to add two quick distinctions on what Bob just said. The two quick distinctions, or this is what I heard you say, is, let's find ways to make the practice of law more efficient, right? Even though it may potentially come at certain costs of jobs here, it may create jobs over here, at least in my impression. And the second one is, let's take some time to really stop hitting the fast forward button and waiting for the next day and really reflect on what's happening today. And I think that's what COVID-19 has given us an opportunity for. With regard to the first point that you made, there is a intended benefit or a massive benefit to humankind by decreasing the cost and increasing the efficiency of access to the legal system. And what that does is it eliminates the weaponization of the litigation process, right? Because litigation is massively expensive. But if you cut out all of the gamesmanship and all of the nonsense and all of the additional costs, you actually make or increase access to the justice system. And if you decrease cost, you're going to see a lot more people and a lot more truth come through our justice system, and less of what can I do to make him spend more money? I better file this motion and request oral argument so that he drives 45 minutes to court, waits around for 45 minutes, and then argues for about 45 minutes, right? And then that'll be an expensive, argument, and that's going to make him want to settle with me or do whatever. You decrease the weaponization of the litigation process and increase access to people. And I think that's so in our profession because access has become very difficult, right? And I mean this lovingly because you're worth every penny, Bob, and I'm expensive too, right? But because there's such a need for our services, some people can't access us, right? Like they can today, right? They can't access us. And that's an unfortunate byproduct of attorneys who have distinguished themselves and are amazing at their craft. But if you decrease some of the cost of litigations, you're going to get more access and you're going to have a more efficient legal system that is geared towards truth and less about the gamesmanship. So yeah, I agree with you. I hope that trend definitely hangs around.
Mike, can I just add to what you just said there for a second?
Yeah.
Efficiencies. Here's what I find ironic in the criminal justice system. Now, when I was prosecutor, because I've been on both sides, my plea offer structure was based upon facts, law, prior history, deterrence, and the ability to rehabilitate. Can we make a difference, as I spoke of earlier? I found that other prosecutors are very random. Numbers are flying out. You go to one courtroom in the same, one case is no state prison time. Go to another courtroom with the same exact case. I actually did an experiment like this when I became prosecutor to prove the point, where everybody came up with 7 different plea offers for the same exact file. Everything
Wow.
ranged to 10 years in state prison. But here's the thing that's interesting about what COVID did. All those people that are in the county jails or in state prison, guess what they're doing now? They're putting lists together to do the best they can to get them out. Let me restate this. They're putting lists together with the prosecutors involved to let them out. And so my thought was when I heard that if you're doing your job correctly as a prosecutor and only putting those people who need to be in there because they represent a continuing danger, then if you're doing a list now to say that they're not a danger and they can be released, what were they doing there in the first place? Honestly. And so you talk about greater efficiencies. This is going to be one of the greater efficiencies of COVID-19. I mean, when they passed the 1,000-foot law, that's the drug law that says look at what we did in scale, okay, to those in Jersey City. I was a Hudson County assistant prosecutor. There was one spot under the Pulaski Skyway, one spot that literally was not within 1,000 feet of a school. Now you come up to Bucolic, Morris County, there are multiple places that are not within 1,000 feet of a school. Now, Jersey City,
Wow.
more minority and lower socioeconomic group. It's just, at the time it was, at least, it's had a great resurgence. Morris County, very well-educated, a lot of money, but they're not within 1,000 feet of the school. So what did we do? All those mandatory sentences that we gave to those kids in the inner city, stacked them like cordwood in state prison because there was nothing the judge could do, or prosecutors. Our hands were bound by a mandatory minimum law. So the same kid in Morris County that was doing that and even worse got no jail time because they weren't within 1,000 feet of the school, but every kid in Jersey City for the same exact thing got clipped. I mean, we got to really revisit, and I as prosecutor used to say this mandatory sentencing scheme, the inefficiencies associated with it, the feel-good legislation with usually somebody's name in front of it because some politician wants to make a point, and then we have a new mandatory sentencing law we got to deal with. I'm telling you, a lot of prosecutors do not like those things. We want the discretion to be able to give a person a break. Sorry for going on my rant.
No, please. And we robbed Peter of his opportunity to weigh in. But Peter, would you mind sharing a little bit?
Yeah, I might not answer your exact question first, but the thing to anyone that knows me, my thing is the word why, right? I get stuck on the word why. When I see something I don't understand, I go, why? Until I understand it, or at least I have an understanding of it at a very philosophical level. So just talking about technology as a whole for a second and innovation, I've just been trying to get my notes together so I can say this quite easily. The driving force of technology of anything is to satisfy its stakeholders. What does technology do? It brings convenience. That's what technology does. And how does it do that? It does it 2 ways. One, it becomes invisible, right? So we go from CRTs to flat screens to projectors. We go from computers to phones to touch screens, and eventually we end up with the ability to actually draw, and we kind of do a full circle. We're back on paper, right? Because it's actually the most, it's the most efficient way to do what I was just trying to do, which is draw some notes. So technology will always remove itself from the equation. That's number one thing to understand about technology. It's still there, but it's not present. The second thing is it brings efficiency. So if you're in a market that's inefficient, I'll give you my perfect example. I once did some work with HarperCollins, the big publisher, and it was the beginning of the ebooks thing. And I said, this is never going to happen. I prefer a book. And they went, we mulch 98% of everything we make.
Wow.
And I went, sorry? They said, we buy back 98% of everything we produce. How can that possibly be the way this is going to work? You're like, wow. And you went, and you look back at it, and in the non-legal world, the non-healthcare world, we go back into a very typical VC world, where what we're talking about is a group of smart people that will see an inefficiency, and they will develop a solution for that inefficiency. And then Michael, Bob, myself, Krista, and everybody that's listening to this goes, well, yeah, of course. So when you say you hope those things stay around, I'm here to tell you that they will win. If you are inefficient, and this is the important part where I'm going to give you guys ultimate praise, and you're not adding value in a human way, you're done. You are done. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, it might not be next year, but if you think your capability is how quickly you can read a law book, or if you think that your capability is your law degree, you are wrong. Because a computer is going to come along and do that better than you. In fact, it already happened. Last year, MIT beat Harvard Law with 10 random cases from a docket. MIT won. The value is the human connection. The value is, as Bob said, the value is going to someone saying, I've just been accused of this and I didn't do this. And I don't just need somebody to win. I need someone to believe in me, and I need someone to give me a virtual hug and tell me this is going to be okay and persuade me this is going to be okay, because otherwise I'm going to run off a building. Mm-hmm. And every single person in history that said, my approach is better, this technology isn't going to work, they are the footnotes of our history. They are the Blockbuster of our history. They are the Nokia of our history. They're the Palm Pilot, and they're the railroads that said, what does this guy Ford think he's doing? Trains are the way forward, right? It's all about efficiency. And if you think that you can trade on anything other than authenticity and integrity and human connection, you're totally wrong. And I'm not saying it's my opinion. You are wrong. You've been proven to be wrong, and you'll be proved to be wrong again. Technology will either make you whole or it will kill you. They are the only two options. So the answer to your question, Michael, on exactly what you asked is what will be maintained? Whenever a market contracts, the contraction kills the people that are weak on the edges. That's what it's done every single time. When we have the dot-com boom and bubble, like boo.com and pets.com, the people that fell by the wayside were people with crummy business models that didn't deserve to be there. But because you get caught up, me and myself as well, human race gets caught in its own hype. It's like, yeah, this is brilliant, this is amazing. And then when we get a reality check, aka COVID, we go, whoa, holy crap. Apparently you can't just go to law school at night for 2 years and then sit outside an emergency room and pick up clients and be okay. Right? They're going out of business. And Michael and Bob and everyone should be going, thank God for that. Because humanity doesn't want the crummy people on the outsides. We don't want you. Like the amount of people I deal with that say, I'm a social media consultant. And you go, seriously? Seriously? And they go, yeah. And I go, tell me why Facebook and Insta haven't combined their product yet. And they go, I'm like, so you don't get social media. So why don't you move along? And they go, we should have a TikTok account. What are we going to do with it? Move along. They're the people that end up just coming out of business. So everybody that has genuine and integrity and authenticity should be loving this period. Because if you can, and yes, it's hard, there's no doubt about it. Yes, we have cash flow problems. Yes, we have to relook at the way we do things, but the people that will remain in their various fields are the people that you wanted to be in those fields in the first place.
Amen.
Mic dropper. How do you even begin to respond? See why I hang out with a guy like Peter, Bob? Can you see that?
Absolutely. That beautifully stated, really.
Yeah.
So the courts will have to, at some point, they will have to allow the virtual appearance, because at some point the wave of, I'm now trying to bring this back to conversation for you, so there isn't any point where you can transfer it back. The wave of stakeholder demand will eventually supersede the demand of the traditionalists, and it is always the way. Like, people have been saying, I know this is totally off topic, will cryptocurrency Bitcoin overtake fiat currencies? Well, China have just said they're trialing it in 8 cities. So welcome to the new world. Crypto just won, and all the people that said it wouldn't just lost, because it is more efficient. So eventually you go, you know what, it's more efficient. Sorry, I don't want to spend time on that. So yeah, those interactions that Bob spoke of are absolutely the way to go through. Will it be like, you know, one day we do it? No, it will take a momentum. You'll probably see places like California get to it quicker, where you have a more liberal digital audience that are going to push for it harder. But there is absolutely no doubt that that is the way it will go. And the reason I think this is so important, I'm now speaking to non-legal people. If you're parenting your children right now and you're homeschooling your kids, don't focus on the math, don't focus on the arithmetic, don't focus on whether they can join up their T's. Focus on the ability for them to tell stories, focus on the ability to understand data, focus on the ability to empathize with other human beings, because computers are going to do all of that stuff for them in 10 years' time. But the people that can interact with data and humans, they're going to be very rich people. Back to you.
And you know, it's funny, you know, Bob, I'm sure, and I remember the days when we had to learn all of our math, right? There's no S at the end of it, Peter, I'm just saying. When we had to learn our math, our teachers told us we wouldn't have a calculator everywhere we went. And lo and behold, we do. So I agree with you on that point. Peter, I want to give you the final word, and then I want to give Bob the final word. So do you want to take us home?
Thank you very much. Yeah, so wow, I've loved that, and I love listening to these guys, and I honestly, I apologize for any mic time I took, because I think I stole time away from Bob, which was inspirational. So it's really simple what we're doing here. If you believe in better, whether that's for yourself now or for yourself tomorrow, or you believe that humanity can chart a better course coming out of this than it did in the past, then go to www.hackmankind.com. There's a blue box, put your email address in, sign up for free, full stop. There is a limit to those free memberships. Once we run out of those, free memberships will continue for life for doctors, nurses, EMTs, teachers, police officers, and firefighters, because quite frankly, you are willing to do things that I'm not willing to do for my family, for my community, for myself, for my wife, and my kids. And the smallest thing that I can do to say thank you is what I'm doing. So with that, I would say thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much, Bob. I will hand over final words, because it's sessions like this that I hope our audience, and actually, I don't hope, I know, because I hear from you, I know our audience are getting amazing value from. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Thank you, Peter. Bob? Oh, did we lose Bob?
Okay, I think I'm back. Can you hear me?
There you go, brother. Yep. You want to have the final word?
Well, I want to thank you guys. It's amazing to be a part of something like this. I'm a deeply spiritual person, and I try very hard to take the bad parts and aspects of myself and make them better. And I think that this is what you guys are doing here. I wish my blessings to everybody that's out there, and for those who are down and out and use services, they're out there. Especially I'm concerned about domestic violence victims. There are services out there. We know it's a difficult time, but we're all going to get through this. And with what Peter and Michael are doing, and so many others within their sphere of influence, is going to have a major impact. So this is a place that people need to be. Michael and I'm really honored that you gave me an opportunity to be on the show.
Please, the honor was all mine. You know, I thought that you did such a tremendous job of connecting people to what makes them not just good people, but world-class people. And I really hope that I've seen a lot of beauty, a lot of wonderful souls, people trying to help, people like Nick Champagne, who's running the hospitality program, who's feeding the frontline workers, a lot of people who've been contributing to that. And I hope, Krista, if you could, can you just paste the contact information for hospitality in case anybody wants to contribute to some of our frontline workers and getting them fed during these crazy times. But I want to say I'm so honored to have you on, Bob, because I really feel philosophically, ideologically, you and I have a whole lot in common. And I just love that there's other practitioners like you out there, especially in the criminal field, which I don't, in all honesty, and I mean this, kindly, I don't run into those kinds of people in criminal defense or in criminal prosecution that often. And maybe I'm hanging out in the wrong circles, but people like you are rare. You're not an oddity. That's a very beautiful thing that you are doing. So I'm honored by the fact that you were on the show, that you were here for Hack Mankind. And just again, Michael Smikun, your relentless guardian, helping to shape and influence results. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Be well, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Bob.
You're welcome.